I figured out how to differentiate between you and John, right? I'll call you JD and I'll call Jonathan John.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Did you guys come to that agreement together, or was that something that has always been part of your nomenclature?
Oh, we had a little, when I was joining the group, because Jonathan was the first Jonathan of Verona Quartet, we had a little tally. But I mean, technically we go by John and JD.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
a mini compromise.
All right. Well, for folks who don't know, you are the four members of the Verona Quartet. A lot of great quotes on your website. The New York Times called you an outstanding ensemble of young musicians. You recently won the Cleveland Quartet Award, which for folks who don't know, that's a pretty prestigious honor to win that. And you're also, among many other things, quartet in residence at Oberlin Conservatory, just down the road from us in Toledo. So a little Ohio pride. I know none of you are from Ohio, but I think one of you went to Oberlin, right? Yeah,
yes.
You did. Abigail. Do you go by Abigail or by Abby or some other nickname, or did I?
Well, we've known each other all of 3 minutes, so you can call me Abby.
Exactly. You can call me Brad. There's no way to shorten it more than that. Although I was told once my rap name would be B-Rad, right? Okay.
That's a good one. I don't think I would have such a good one. Abby? No.
So before we talk about your debut recording, let's get to know you guys a little bit. You can introduce yourselves for our audience. And I'm just looking at the screen here. We'll go in order of folks that are listed. So we'll start with you, Abigail. You're American by birth. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm the sole American in the group. I was born and raised in a suburb of San Francisco, and moved away from California for the first time to come to Oberlin College, or Oberlin Conservatory, actually, where I, of course, I lived here for 4 years and completed my degree. And from there, I went to the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music, which is where I met Jonathan Ong. And the quartet started from there. So that's where my story joins up with the quartets.
Yeah, well, let's turn to you, Jonathan. You guys met, where'd you say, in Bloomington? Yeah, and so you formed this quartet. Was it a duo first, or did you conceive of it as a quartet from the beginning?
No, it was a string quartet. The four of us were happily, it was kind of a happy intersection of four people in different stages of their education, but all with a shared love for chamber music. And we started playing together. And we had some fantastic mentors at Indiana, amongst them the Pacifica Quartet, Atara Rod from the Cleveland Quartet, Alex Carr, Eric Kim, Iquan Bay. And they all saw something special in us, and they said, you should really pursue this as a career. Dorothy joined us. I actually knew Dorothy from our time in Cleveland, where I was doing my grad school at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and she joined us a year into the group's formation. And JD joined us, I think now almost, want to say 3.5 years ago from London, or from Yorkshire, really, where he's from.
Yeah, and you're from Singapore originally.
I am from Singapore, right?
How long have you been in the States then?
I came to the States when I was 16 years old in 2003. I came for my undergrad degree. I was at the Eastman School of Music. And then I had to go back to Singapore and serve for 2 years in the military service. So I was out of school for about 3 years, and then I came back, and that's when I went to Cleveland.
Yeah, interesting. Dorothy, tell us a little bit about yourself, because you're from Canada originally, right?
Yes, I was born in Toronto, but I was raised in Nova Scotia, which is East Coast Canada. And like Jonathan said, I did my undergraduate at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and I met John a few years later after that. And I did my master's in Houston, Texas at Rice University. I love the school. I am not a fan of Houston weather. It's just much too hot, and I also don't like cockroaches. So I was glad I was only there for 2 years, and then I joined the quartet and moved to Bloomington, and the rest is, with the quartet.
The rest is history, as they say. JD, I've saved you for last, JD. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I'm from Yorkshire England originally, and I did my studies in Manchester, England, at the Royal Northern College of Music. And then every few years or so, I like to move 3,000 miles west. And so I went to study at the New England Conservatory, where I did my master's. And then after that, I went to study at University of Southern California, Thornton School of Music in Los Angeles. So another sort of 3,000 miles west. And after that, I actually went back to the UK, and I started embarking on my professional career. And I was very fortunate to have played as guest principal with the Philharmonia Orchestra, BBC National Orchestra of Wales, the Royal Northern Symphonia, and got to record some movie scores in Abbey Road. It was very cool. Yeah. And then I joined these guys, and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, JD, I understand your other claim to fame is Google Maps.
So yeah, where I live in Yorkshire, my parents live rather. I was probably about 20, and I was just walking down the street with my cello, and I saw this strange-looking vehicle driving past. And then if you go back into the sort of, because I think you can go back into the each year you can see what Google Maps did, and if you go onto Thurlstone Road in Yorkshire, England, you will see me walking down the street with my face blurred out, but very clearly a cellist walking in rural England. So you can't mistake a cellist in rural England.
Everybody rush to their computers and jump on Google Maps, see if they can find you in Yorkshire. Well, you guys, obviously, just from the little mini bios you've given, you've got quite a fantastic pedigree. Can you tell me how the group came together? Now, I know Abigail and Jonathan, you sort of started the group. First of all, where's the name come from? When did you decide to become the Verona Quartet, and why did you decide on that name? Does anybody know? You do know you are the Verona Quartet, right?
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, skip my mind for a quick second.
Just want to make sure I got the right group here. Yeah.
The name Verona, it pays tribute to William Shakespeare. And the reason for that is, of course, Shakespeare was one of the greatest storytellers of all time. And music at its essence is storytelling. And you can tell that story, you can express these things through really any medium. We feel like music is just one of the very powerful mediums, dance, visual art, literature. So that's why we wanted to kind of reach beyond our sort of particular genre for our namesake. And we also collaborate outside of the music field as well. And that's an important part of who we are. So
yeah, that's great. Well, I know you're all here to talk about the new album, your debut album. I've got it right here. Beautiful picture, by the way. It's called Diffusion, which gives a little bit of a hint as to the music that's on this disc. Now, string quartets, when they come out with a debut album, it's kind of a statement that they want to make. I mean, you want to represent yourself to many listeners who wouldn't hear you otherwise. What are you saying with this idea of tying together these cultures, this idea of diffusion? How did you decide on the pieces you include here?
Well, the music itself is, from that particular snapshot in history, the very early 20th century. And of course, even though it's three different sort of cultures within that, France, Poland, and Czechia, we have through that sort of found the unique language, but also the similarities between this music. And I think that it's just important for this music to sort of be part of the sort of traditional string quartet canon, but yet it also has that sort of forward-looking aspirations and sort of sometimes mystical, sometimes incredibly hyper-romantic. And I think that's the reason that we were drawn to sort of including these pieces together.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything you want to say about that? JD had it all for you there.
Well, one thing I would just point out is, a debut album is in some ways a calling card for an ensemble. And so for us, not only did we want to represent music that was meaningful to us, that we loved, that we know our audiences, through our performances, we've seen that they've really connected with this music as well, but that reflected an idea that was really crucial to who we are. And as you've heard, we're all from different parts of the world. And so in a sense, this notion of a cultural migration or, culture permeating a new one is essential to us. Jonathan came here, JD came here from another country. I know Dorothy's parents are from Korea, and, my ancestors were also immigrants. So this kind of concept of learning about new cultures and becoming something new and really unifying into something greater, this is really essential to us.
Yeah. Well, I should say, I mean, it's beautifully recorded, beautifully played by the four of you. And the repertoire on this disc is really interesting. I mean, I've never spent a lot of time listening to that quartet by Janacek, but listening to your version, it really comes to life. This series of little love letters. It's a wonderful, wonderful performance. And you've got it paired with another piece that was written about the same time, the late 1920s, by Polish composer Karol Szymanowski, which I had never heard before in my life. I've heard the first string quartet, but not the second string quartet. And those two, even though they were written at around the same time, they are worlds apart. They're very different from each other. Can you talk a little bit about those particular works and how you chose them and maybe how they compare, contrast with each other?
Well, for the Szymanowski, the three of me, Abigail, and Jonathan, we had never heard of this particular quartet. JD actually introduced it to us, and I'm so thankful that he did, because it's such an amazing piece of work.
Yeah.
And it's it's less commonly heard or played in North America, so that was one of the big reasons why we decided to record it. And there's so much in it. It's a jam-packed quartet. It's on the shorter end, but there's still a lot to offer. And the Janacek is just one of our favorites. I mean, it's just amazing. And I think what's particular in this quartet is that Janacek doesn't write in this traditional sense where there's like a clear first theme that goes to a second theme, development section, recap. He doesn't really write like that. He writes more in a humanistic, emotional way. He will start with one musical idea and then out of nowhere just like come up with and introduce a completely different idea. And it's very almost like manic and erratic. And I think that that has to do with the theme of this quartet. His love obsession with this younger woman, and it's very apparent in this piece. And that's very exciting for us to delve into and to perform.
Yeah, it's great. I'm thinking of it for Valentine's Day programming. I'm not sure if that's quite appropriate, but
maybe not.
We'll see.
We've done it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece. The Szymanowski seems like a really hard quartet to represent, to bring together. I mean, I imagine it presents some challenges for you. The string quartet, on its own is challenging enough to balance out and find where voices are going and that sort of thing. But this particular piece is technically kind of difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a very atmospheric element to it that you sometimes don't get in other quartets. And I think one of the challenges in trying to portray these three pieces is how do we make them sound different yet incorporate still our own voice as a quartet into it. And I think that has really to do with not only having a beautiful quartet sound, but within that quartet sound finding a range of different colors and textures. We love to talk about music, and in terms of textures, I believe we actually have a word to describe a certain kind of texture. We call it corduroy, the corduroy sound, and that actually came from one of our coaches. And always thinking of, and especially the Szymanowski, there's so many colors, and the dynamic range is so wide. It starts extremely quietly, almost like very placid, and it starts to build up in this crescendo, and it's a happy challenge, I would say.
Yeah. And then you turn to the Ravel Quartet, which is probably the most recorded, most performed of all the works on this disc. And it's interesting, I think, to note that you're kind of going back in time, almost 20 years. I mean, a lot happened between the Ravel Quartet and the music by Janacek and Szymanowski. The First World War, for instance, you know, when I hear those opening bars, it seems like you're kind of, and this feeds into the idea of diffusion, you're kind of going back through memory to a more innocent time. I mean, what was the reasoning behind putting that piece on the disc and placing it last in your program?
Well, I think that firstly, choosing the piece, the Ravel is a special piece for the Verona Quartet. And it's something that we wanted to incorporate on the debut album because it's a piece that we've been through a lot with, just personally. But I think musically, you know, this piece was written sort of the very beginning of, you know, the modern world as we now know it. So even though it is a little bit more, you know, in quotations, traditional than maybe the Janacek and the Szymanowski, there's still quirky elements to it. And the last movement, for instance, was widely considered at the time it was written absolutely just kind of crazy and insane. It was written in a 5 meter, and very typical for music to be in sort of even meters, or maybe a 3, you know, like the waltz or whatever.
Yeah.
But so it has this sort of lopsided element to it in the last movement. But, and I think it really lays the foundations, you know, for that impressionistic sound world that both the Szymanowski and the Janacek do borrow from, even if it's done in their own unique style. So, and I think putting it last, I don't know if there's, you know, a strong reason for any of the pieces to go in a particular order other than that I feel that the coming to something that is sort of what is the model, if you like, for what I'm sure these composers were completely aware of this fantastic and unique quartet as an inspiration. And it just has a really strong and powerful message, I think, as an
Yeah. Well, if you do listen to it all the way through, which I did this morning, by the way, it changes your perception of the Ravel a little bit, having it come right out of the Szymanowski quartet.
Yeah, I will, if I can add just really quickly, I actually do think that exactly what you're saying is precisely what we're after, which is that, you know, when you any piece of music from, you know, that was written before right now, right this very moment, we start to build a sense of perspective on it, and we can understand it increasingly in the context of history. And our goal is always to grow and to develop and to elevate what we're doing. And so when we look back, we can appreciate it for what it was at that time, and we can appreciate it through what that piece, the Ravel, must have been in 1927 and 28 when they were looking back 20 some years. And we can look at it now from in 2021, we can look back 100 and some odd years later, and we understand its context so much better. Its greatness doesn't change, but its relevance and its place in history and what it means changes. I think that's really fascinating.
You know, when I listen to a particular string quartet, I'm talking about as an ensemble, I'm always struck by the distinctive characteristics that they each bring to this music. Do one of you want to talk a little bit about your aesthetic as far as the kind of sound that you're going for in playing these pieces and in general?
Wow, that's I think the reason why it's so hard for any of us to
20 words or less.
20 words or less. Oh, that's even harder. Silence. But you know, I think a lot of the way we play is kind of a mixture of the mentors that kind of guided us along our path, but also, you know, our individual personalities. Oops, my light went off. But I think as kind of a philosophy, the quartet, we believe in the quartet as an organism of 4 equal voices. Both these voices are at once individual and not, and they're a group. And we want to make sure that the listener, when they hear us play, they hear the four individual voices and the whole, which is kind of the fifth voice of the quartet. And I think that really was born out of just some incredible mentorship by, of course, the Cleveland Quartet, the Juilliard Quartet, the Pacifica Quartet. And we like to think of just this amalgamation of overtones kind of just living in the upper atmosphere. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
I'll just add that maybe because we're from 4 different places and we grew up with slightly different input into the sound world, and you grow up hearing different things in different corners of the world. And I think the fact that we've come together and that we have this common language and we're able to find this sound together that blends and has its own unique string quartet sound, I think that's special for us, that we can have a sort of both a sound that has reverence for the past, but also is a sort of a modern sound, and is very much rooted in where we are now.
Yeah. Well, I can say, having listened to it, there's a great sense of confidence in everything that you're doing. I mean, you definitely have something to say with these pieces, and you don't hear that often in young string quartets, so you're to be commended for that. You call yourself a quartet for the 21st century, and as I understand it, you've got another recording already planned. Is that still happening?
Yes, we've recorded one piece in full already, and we look forward to recording the remaining 2 in just a couple months.
And this is more recent music than what you've got on the first disc, right?
Yeah, so the 3 pieces are all contemporary living composers.
Yeah, great. Well, I definitely look forward to hearing that. I want to hear a little bit about your experience at Oberlin, because you got this assignment to be quartet in residence and do some teaching there about a year ago, I think it was. And, we were right in the middle of the pandemic. How did that affect the work you were doing as a quartet and as teachers to other students?
Well, thankfully, Oberlin has done an amazing job just overseeing the year with COVID, and thankfully we've been able to curate a hybrid model course. So we've been able to do in-person lessons, coaching, chamber music coaching, safely, distance, and with all the safety protocol. So I think we've been incredibly lucky, and I know the students have really appreciated this course in particular, because a lot of the time they're spent cooped up in their own rooms, not having any in-person interaction, having to do most of their classes online. So this was sort of like a nice space for them to be with one another and to connect with one another through chamber music, which is really a wonderful thing. So we've been so lucky, so fortunate to be here. It's been so wonderful working with the students and the faculty.
Well, I think for many people, not just people who study music, but people who listen to music, it's been a huge refuge. It's been kind of a little escape room for a lot of folks that have been facing all these difficulties during the pandemic. Before I let you go, I want to ask you about the cover art. I showed the CD at the very beginning. Yeah, did one of you make this, or did this come from somewhere? Or am I completely ignorant when I have no idea what this is? Can you tell me?
So we had an amazing artist who we worked with named David Ford, and he designed this beautiful cover with the flowers and also this wonderfully abstract, sort of almost looks like a painter's palette, but with the diffusion of colors throughout. You can see many of them, and yeah, his work is really beautiful. And we actually we worked with him pretty closely in trying to decide what artwork really reflected the concept of the album. And there came a point where we all said, "Oh, that's the one." So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Are you guys going to be performing more now that things are starting to open up? At least here in Ohio, I know things are opening up. a lot more. Some of the folks that I talk with regularly have told me they've started scheduling concerts. What's happening with you guys?
Oh, yeah, well, we're very fortunate that we've already had a couple of in-person concerts under the belt already. And going forward, we have a nice summer schedule coming up, including concerts in New York and in Colorado. We're also potentially in Canada, hope maybe if a situation allows. But we're delighted to be getting back to it because the audience is just an integral part of the experience of a performance.
Yeah.
And performing for an empty hall is just not the same because every performance is fleeting and it has its own unique sort of perspective. And I think that an audience really helps add to that experience.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. Well, we hope you can make it out our way. We're only a couple hours away, so you know, you have a standing invitation next time you're in town to stop in at the studio here. I've been talking with the 4 members of the Verona Quartet, John Ong, Dorothy Rowe, Abigail Rajansky, and JD or Jonathan Dormant. They've joined me to talk about their new album, which I held up. I'll hold it up again. It's called Diffusion, their debut album from Azica Records. Guys, thanks so much for spending some time to talk about this and letting us get to know you a little bit here on FM 91.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.